It's alright, it's okay. There's something to live for. Jesus told me so.
What's up, everybody? Back again with another video review, and this time I watched The Avengers. Now, I was lucky enough to see this movie last night. I was freaking out. It's such a privilege. I've been dying to see this movie for years, ever since they came up with the idea, as I'm sure everyone has. That said, I want to do a review of the movie, but I would be remiss not to spoil it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do a review at the beginning here, and then I will put up a spoiler alert. You'll see it, runs for 5 seconds. If you go past that, it's not your fault. And then I'm essentially going to spoil almost everything in the movie. But I'm also going to pick out the parts that I really loved, and I need to talk about those because without it, it's just going to sound like, oh, this was a cool movie, check it out, blah. But yeah, here's my review, and then stick to the end and you'll see spoilers, or avoid it if you don't want to hear anything like that. Now, I would be remiss to point out that I'm actually a huge comic nerd, if you couldn't tell from the poster, and like I have a Thor hammer and Captain America stuff and everything like that. But my history with the Avengers isn't as long and storied as, a lot of other comics. I started out as a Spider-Man fan. About 6 or 7, I actually picked up the Marvel Masterworks Avengers. I'm not a big fan of team books, so the Avengers was new to me. I figured the characters work stronger on their own. That said, reading that Marvel Masterworks kind of started my love affair with this idea that heroes team up to fight a common villain, cause, whatever. So, for 20 odd years, I've been an Avengers fan, a comics fan, and that has kind of culminated with, all the Marvel movies and now the Avengers. Now, in the comics, there were 2 kinds of Avengers stories. There was always the Avengers stories where the Avengers were fighting something that any number of them or specific, members of the group could probably defeat on their own. And then there were Avengers stories that had these massive, giant threats that it wasn't even plausible that the Avengers as a team could stop them. But as always, the Avengers would triumph, which was always a little hokey, but at the same time, it was pretty neat. So to say the movie version of Avengers kind of caters to my inner 6-year-old is a huge understatement. The whole idea that when I was a kid and when a lot of, dorks or comic fans were kids, you play with the toys, you read the comics, you watch the Saturday morning cartoons, and it became this sandbox where you could take these characters and they were your own, and you could kind of do whatever you wanted with them. Oh, I have a Cap figure and I have an Iron Man figure, and they're teaming up and they're going to Latveria to fight Doctor Doom, but at the same time Thor is over, in outer space or something, and he's fighting the Silver Surfer for no reason. So this movie and the idea that Marvel has created with this movie and the whole Marvel movie universe, just really feeds on that inner tiny kid nerd sensibility. Now, while this movie obviously deals with the team dynamic of these characters, it does take the established individual characters from the previous films and kind of elaborates on it. Now, not to a large degree, considering this is a team movie, but many of the characters kind of receive a little more characterization than what they got in their initial, or in Iron Man's case, the sequel. That actually helps the movie because it's a little hard to jump into it not seeing those movies, but at the same time you can get a grasp of the characters just watching the Avengers. Now, like I said in my Cabin in the Wood review, Joss Whedon is kind of knocking it out of the park this year. Writing and directing the Avengers, he has crafted a movie that is a big action blockbuster, a big popcorn flick, but has some really sharp dialogue. Now, that's not to say it's perfect dialogue, because the movie itself is kind of an ode to comic books. It is a comic book movie. A lot of the dialogue feels right at home in a comic book, which doesn't necessarily translate well to the screen or real life. That said, it comes off as pitch perfect. Whedon gets these characters. He understands, where each of them are, and not just in the grand comic universe, because the continuity can kind of bog everything down, but in terms of the Marvel universe that they've established, he gets the characters, he takes them to the logical places they should be at, and again, the dialogue is just tack sharp. And I'd just like to say bravo for that. The fact of the matter is, because he's Marvel's cash cow right now, Iron Man is the focus of this movie. It is a team movie, but Iron Man gets the lion's share of or Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr., whatever, gets the lion's share of the screen time. He gets the lion's share of the great dialogue. He gets the biggest share in terms of heroics in the movie. His character is taken further in the movie than some of the other characters. That isn't a bad thing. It's not a great thing either. At its core, the kind of story in this movie revolves, again, around Loki and Thor and their brotherly conflict and, things like that. That said, anyone going into this movie thinking that Iron Man wasn't going to be the focus probably wasn't paying too much attention. Again, he is the central Marvel figure right now, especially in terms of these movies. So, of course, he was going to be the big focus of the Avengers. Now, despite the fact that Iron Man is kind of the focus of the movie, the Hulk, on the other hand, who is a character that I'm not crazy about, never have been, steals the entire movie. Not to give too much away yet, but, first 3/4 of the movie, the Hulk is almost non-existent. He does make a big appearance scene, and then it's kind of a whole lot of nothing. However, at the finale of the movie, the Hulk takes center stage, and again, he steals the show. This character that, in movie terms, they've struggled with a lot, comes into his own in this team dynamic, because you see that he kind of doesn't really work well with the team, but at the same time, he has a hell of a lot to offer on his own. So he kind of goes off and does his own thing in this big team battle. That said, that thing that he does is just so damn amazing, especially for a nerd. Again, not the biggest Hulk fan, but I went with someone that is a huge Hulk fan, and he was just floored. Now, I will say the Avengers is kind of bittersweet, because Tom Hiddleston playing Loki was kind of the strong point in the Thor film, and he's also a very, very strong villain character. He plays it very well in this film. And I say it's bittersweet because you can kind of tell by the end of this movie, you're probably not going to see Loki for a while. Now, in these Marvel movies, you don't want to see the same villain over and over and over again. That would get old. If he showed up in Avengers 2, it would get a little old. That said, he has a screen presence, and the way they've written the character, that he is just phenomenal to watch, and I could watch a Loki movie by itself and be completely satisfied. The rest of the cast is pretty great. I've mentioned Hulk, but Mark Ruffalo deserves a lot of that attention. He takes Banner and takes him to some pretty interesting places, because he is timid, he is kind of shy, and then this Hulk comes out, but he has kind of an attitude in this movie, and kind of a presence, and Mark Ruffalo really nailed that, more so I'd say than Ed Norton or Eric Bana before him. Other supporting characters, pretty solid. Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, I still consider him a supporting character. He was much better in this than he was in something like Iron Man 2. But even saying that, he's still Sam Jackson with an eye patch. He's not really showing a great acting range here. But he's still pretty great. The Clark Gregg, who plays Agent Coulson, awesome as usual. He is probably the best thing to come out of these Marvel movies, considering he is a character created for these Marvel movies. And lastly, you have like Colby Smulders or whatever from How I Met Your Mother. She's almost non-existent, doesn't even need to be mentioned. That said, she did an okay job as Mariah Hill, who ends up taking over S.H.I.E.L.D., at least in the comics. But, I could do without her. The really, really surprising thing about the Avengers, that going into it I had no idea was going to be this way, is they made Black Widow and Hawkeye, who even if you look at the posters you see are just these extraneous characters that are kind of tacked on. They made them kind of relevant. Black Widow especially, she's kind of worthless. It's Scarlett Johansson. She's the TNA in the movie. But they took her character in kind of some interesting places. Nothing too far. But she kind of added to the movie, which is great. And Jeremy Renner is Hawkeye, a guy with a bow and arrow. I always loved Hawkeye as a character, but not because he had any place in the Avengers. He was just a neat character. In this movie, his character kind of takes a back seat until the end, and then he kind of becomes a badass. That's what they do with these kind of tertiary characters. And, you know, I was pretty impressed by it. Another huge surprise is the fact that this movie finishes well. The other Marvel movies had trouble getting to the conclusion. Or rather, they would get to the conclusion, and then they had trouble ending the movie. So, you know, typically like Iron Man 2 especially, you get to this fight with Whiplash, and it lasts all of 5 seconds, and Iron Man and War Machine, you know, shoot their lasers, and boom, it's done. You know, and Thor, you know, he fights Loki for like 2 seconds, bashes a bridge, done. Captain America, same thing, he punches Red Skull a couple of times, done. In this, the final battle is like 45 minutes long. It's glorious. There's everything you could hope for. There's individual character moments that are just great. There are, you know, the team up moments that are just, you know, geek worthy. And the whole thing doesn't feel like it was rushed, or it doesn't feel like it was something tacked on just to end the movie, or, you know, like all the movies trying to set up something else. This is its own thing, and it benefits from it immensely because it tells its own story. It finishes super strong and just has one of the best superhero endings I've ever seen. So all told, this is everything I could have hoped for in a movie. It is amazing how well all of this came together. That's not to say it's not without faults. The comic booky dialogue, like I mentioned before, gets a little weird. There's some leaps of logic in the film that I'll get to more in the spoiler section. But that said, I couldn't be more pleased with this. This is the movie to top this year, and I'm really excited for Prometheus. You know, it's just, God. I came home and I couldn't sleep for 4 hours because I was so just pumped up. And I don't even think you have to be a nerd to be this pumped up about the movie. When you see it, it is just a glorious spectacle. It's 2.5 hours long, does not run long at all. It has one of the best post-credits or mid-credit sequences, which again I'll get to in the spoilers, of any of the Marvel movies, or really any movie. It is just mind-numbingly great, and I am so happy that they knocked this out of the park, and this should be the biggest movie of the year. I urge everyone to go at midnight or opening weekend and, you know, cement this as one of the, not just tentpole films of the summer, but the tentpole film of a generation. It's been all building up to this, and it pays off in a big way. So that's it for my review. Again, right after this, I'm going to spoil the entire movie, talk about the things I really loved, and if you want to see that, if you don't mind it being spoiled, or if you've already seen the movie, you're watching this after it's come out, you know, let me know what you think. But guys, thanks again for watching, and I will catch you later. Okay, so here's the entire Avengers movie spoiled for you. I am one of those people that I don't mind spoilers. If you do, this is your last chance. Please do not watch this. This is a great movie to watch. That said, there are a lot of things about this movie that even talking or hinting at would spoil. So this is as much my place as it is your place to kind of see what those moments were and just, you know, as nerds or not as nerds, just kind of connect with that. So let me launch into it. Okay, the movie kind of opens with Loki meeting this crazy, very creepy looking alien guy with a shroud on his top part of his face and bloody teeth. And they're talking about, getting the Tesseract, which is the cosmic cube, and taking over Earth. And Loki's going to get help by this Chitauri army, but he needs to give the cube to someone. And he gets this spear, this big, like, blue-tipped spear. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. is attempting to experiment on the Tesseract. They have Dr. Selvig from the Thor movie. Hawkeye's there. Nick Fury shows up. Mariah Hill. They're trying to use the Tesseract to unlock unlimited free green energy for the planet. But as you find out later, they're actually developing a weapon as a means of deterrence for, like, the Asgardians or other alien races. While they're experimenting on the cube, it starts behaving abnormally. And all of a sudden, the cube opens a portal, and when kind of the dust settles, Loki's there with this staff. He proceeds to trash the lab that the cosmic cube's in, and then he, touches people's chests with the staff that he has, and it actually allows him to control these people. One of them is Hawkeye. So with the help of this brainwashed Hawkeye and, these other agents, Loki gets the cube. Nick Fury has a contingency plan. He's going to destroy this base, which is underground. So the whole thing starts collapsing. But Loki and these agents escape with the cube, and Nick Fury's left to formulate a plan as to what the hell he's going to do to get this cube back. To get the cube back, he decides to get the Avengers to find Loki. And he wants Dr. Banner to use his gamma radiation knowledge to try and track the cube and find out where it is using scientific means. Barring that, he obviously needs to stop Loki, so he wants to get the Avengers together to do that. That said, Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. need to report to something called the Council, who are kind of world leaders. One of them is Powers Booth, which is an awesome cameo. And, they all think it's a terrible idea to get the Avengers together. They say they've dumped all this money into S.H.I.E.L.D., why can't they do it? But Fury, decides to do it anyway. Besides Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, who in a clip you see before the movie's released, kind of breaks free when she finds out that Hawkeye has been compromised. They go to get Dr. Banner, the Hulk, who's in India kind of hiding out, helping sick people. And the whole thing is apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. has been letting him, do his thing for a while, and they're coming to kind of call in a debt for leaving him alone by having him help find the cube. And Nick Fury goes and finds Cap and brings him on board, and Iron Man, in a pretty funny scene, gets visited by Agent Coulson, who then gets him to come aboard as well. Not long after this, Loki, as a part of his plan, just shows up in Germany and starts subjugating this crowd of people. So Cap goes in, he's fighting him, he's kind of no match for Loki, until Iron Man kind of swoops in, hits Loki, and Loki kind of allows himself to be taken into custody. But part of Loki's plan is to not only get this group of heroes or whatever to kind of infight amongst themselves, but ultimately to get Banner to Hulk out and take them all out at once. While they're transporting Loki back to the helicarrier, the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base of operations, they're flying in this jet, and Thor lands on the ceiling. His whole goal is to get his brother back, take him back to Asgard to pay for his crimes, which essentially puts him in the way of S.H.I.E.L.D. and their effort to locate the cube and take Loki into custody. So Thor takes Loki, they have a bit of dialogue, which is really neat, and all of a sudden Iron Man swoops in and hits Thor, and they start fighting, which is a super awesome geek moment that's just great. That clip is actually online now if you want to see it, but they're fighting in this forest on a mountainside, and that goes on for a little while until Cap shows up, tells them all to stop fighting. Thor, just in a rage, goes to swing his hammer at Cap. It hits the shield, which is made out of vibranium, and it kind of levels the forest, at which point they're, for whatever reason, they all just stand down, and they all go back to the helicarrier with Loki as their prisoner. While on the helicarrier, Loki's influence is being felt He's locked in a cage meant for the Hulk. It's this big circular room with an iris in the bottom that they can drop the Hulk out. Not that that would do anything, but they put Loki in there. But his influence is being felt by the people in the helicarrier. They kind of start bickering and fighting. And while this is happening, the mind-controlled Hawkeye shows up, shoots an arrow into one of the helicarrier's propellers, which is essentially causing it to crash. And during this, there's an explosion, and Banner and Black Widow fall through the ship, and Banner can't control himself and starts hulking out. After chasing Black Widow around for a while, and that's the scene in the trailer where they're kind of crashing through everything, Thor shows up to fight the Hulk. During this time, Cap and Iron Man are trying to repair the propeller to keep the helicarrier from going down. This is a little bit of an extended scene. I didn't really need that. I thought they could have cut a little bit of that, but it's them teaming up to fix the helicarrier. But the real bread and butter is when Thor comes in and starts fighting the Hulk. It's interesting to see how strength-wise they're kind of matched. Blow for blow, they're both going back and forth. Obviously, these are the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. And the fight's still going when the Hulk is actually distracted by a jet that comes up and starts shooting its minigun. And he leaps out of the helicarrier and starts ripping the jet apart and ultimately falls, at some point. After kind of fighting with the Hulk a little bit, Thor goes to find Loki. He goes to the containment area. He dives to get to Loki. It's actually a decoy because Loki has his illusions, and Loki locks him in the containment area. He's going to drop him when Agent Coulson shows up, and he has this gun that's apparently made out of the destroyer armor from the Thor movie. Shield's adapted it into tech, and he says something to the effect of, "I don't know what it does," and as he's about to fire, Loki teleports behind him and stabs him through the chest with the spear. So Agent Coulson does die at this point, but not before he gets last awesome line out. He shoots the gun, it knocks Loki through a wall, ultimately, which led to his escape, and Coulson says something to the effect of, "Oh, now I know what it does." Right before Coulson shoots Loki through this wall, Loki actually hits the button that drops Thor. So he's in this supposedly impenetrable containment unit flying down 60,000 feet. Just as he's about to hit the ground, he flies out with his hammer. The thing crashes. He lands in this field. Having Coulson die isn't just a Whedon trick, or I shouldn't say trick, a Whedon ploy to get the audience to cry, as he does in some of his movies. In terms of the plot, Fury actually uses his death as motivation to get Cap and Iron Man to work together to kind of save New York, save the world from the threat that Loki poses. So after escaping, Loki is in New York. I should also mention that during this whole fight, Black Widow knocks Hawkeye in the head, and he is not brainwashed anymore. But either way, Loki heads to New York. Dr. Selvig was brainwashed. He has set up the cube on top of Stark Tower, which is this new green fixture in New York, and activates it, opening this portal where thousands of alien Chitauri, is what they're called, start pouring out and kind of demolishing and taking over the city. Because of the death of Coulson, Cap and Iron Man and Black Widow and Hawkeye all head to New York, and they're staving off this alien invasion. How someone like, Black Widow with guns, people even chuckled when she was killing aliens, or Hawkeye with his arrows could really do anything against an alien invasion is beyond me. But that's going on for a while. When Thor shows up, he starts beating him, and eventually Banner rides up on a motorcycle. Now, the entire movie, Iron Man's been the only one that wants Banner to use the Hulk as, it's intended to be a weapon. He says it's his destiny, it's a good thing that happened to him. He says, use it, help them. So he keeps pleading with him as this giant snake, also in the trailer, starts coming down the street, and it's going to essentially kill them all. And Banner says one of the coolest lines in the movie. He says, it's not about controlling it, it's not about making myself angry. He's like, because I'm always angry. And he instantaneously changes into the Hulk in a pretty seamless animation and punches this thing in the face, which causes it not only to die, but to flip over. But of course, after that, Loki calls in more, and 5 of the same giant snake things come out of the portal, and thousands of more aliens, and the real finale, the fight, begins. This is the part of the movie that's really special, because you get to see these individual character moments where everyone's doing something neat. Iron Man kind of flies through one of these giant snake things, and while he's in there, shoots all these missiles. It blows up from the inside. Hulk and Thor are kind of teaming up against one of the snake things. Hulk rams a giant piece of metal into its neck, and then Thor hits it with the hammer, driving it in. Thing crashes into like Union Station, and they're standing there, and Thor's got a smile on his face, and the Hulk, like just bumping him on the shoulder, like good job, ends up punching him through like 3 city blocks. Black Widow and Hawkeye even get their own moments in the sun here, because Black Widow has her little stinger thing, which has never appeared before, but shows up at the finale of the movie, whatever. And she's like electrocuting things, and Hawkeye is just nonchalantly shooting arrows left and right. He's pointing them behind his back, hitting things, blowing them up. So that's where Hawkeye kind of becomes a cool character in the movie, even if he wasn't developed as well. The kind of downer here is actually Cap. He doesn't have a whole lot to do here. He's helping citizens. He's fighting where he can. But strangely enough, he's not coming off as a badass. Now, he does take the role of a leader. He's kind of pointing the Avengers where they need to go. He sends Thor to the top of the Empire State Building to shoot lightning and kind of take out as many of the aliens coming from the sky as he can. And he gives that great line, Hulk smash, and then the Hulk goes off and does his thing. The bar none best part of this entire sequence is when the Hulk jumps through a window in Stark Tower and Loki's there. And Loki starts monologuing about the Hulk is just a stupid beast and, he can't accomplish anything. And Hulk grabs him and just throws him around like a rag doll, just beating him. And slams Loki into the ground, and just the look on Loki's face, just like, oh shit. And the way the Hulk, just nonchalantly walks away and says, like, puny god, is just comedy gold. It's awesome, and it really shows you what the Hulk can do. While this is going on, the council from before has no faith in Fury and his Avengers team to actually stop what's happening in New York, so they decide to nuke it, as they do in every action movie ever. So they override some of the SHIELD computers. Fury tries to stop it by shooting a rocket. Another plane goes off. They launch the missile. Now Iron Man, again, I said earlier that he's kind of the focus in this movie. Iron Man decides to kind of take one for the team, even though Thor could do it, or even Hulk could do it, or whoever. And he flies up, grabs the warhead, and flies it through the portal above Stark Tower where all the aliens are coming from. So Iron Man's flying this nuke into deep space. There's a giant alien spaceship, thousands more aliens just waiting, and he lets the nuke go, essentially destroying the rest of the aliens, which I guess through some robotic or psychic link all fall dead on the planet as well. Now he's up in space. He has no contact with Jarvis anymore, so he's in a free fall. So he closes his eyes and he's falling through the portal. Meanwhile, Black Widow has gotten like Loki's staff and is attempting to shut the portal by ramming it into the cosmic cube. Iron Man makes it through just in time, and then the scene from the trailer hits where the Hulk jumps in and catches him. After this, we kind of cut to a scene where they're showing news reports and people are thanking the Avengers, and of course like Fox News and CNN are asking if they are a menace or if they're good or if the aliens came because of the Avengers or whatever. And there's a really neat little news snippet about a councilman who's saying that they need to register, which is kind of setting up the Civil War thing, which is pretty awesome. But then it talks about that nobody knows where the Avengers are, and they're all like almost an Ocean's 11 scene, like walking through the park. Thor and Loki have Thor has the cube, Loki's bound, and they head back to Asgard. They use the cube to transport back, and the rest of them kind of scatter to the wind. Meanwhile, there's this monologue overlay. It's Fury talking to the council about how, the team will come back together when there is a need, which is the whole point of the Avengers, and which is just awesome. Fury walks away, fade to black, credits start rolling. Now, about a minute into the credits, you have that secret scene. It's in every Marvel movie. It's pretty awesome. But if you remember, Loki was talking to this alien earlier in the film, creepy looking guy. he says, they need the cube, get them the cube, and he can have the army. That same alien is talking to someone like sitting in a throne in space, and he says, Loki failed, but there's this team of heroes. We can't defeat them. To try and conquer Earth is to court death. Then the camera pans to the back of this throne, face turns with a smile, and it's Thanos from the comics. Now, if you're a nerd, that's awesome. Thanos is this awesome villain who literally the whole court death line, he wants to kill billions of people to impress Death and get her to like marry him or something. So this is a perfect setup for a future Avengers movie. Obviously, none of the movies themselves could, really do Thanos justice. So an Avengers 2 would be perfect for that. That said, you also had Thor and Hulk in this, who could have individually taken out both threats, Loki and the aliens, in this film. Whereas Thanos, this comes into play, what I said at the beginning of the review, he's almost a villain that the Avengers, even as a team, kind of have no hope of beating. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But that was the entire movie. As far as I know, there might be something at the end of the credits, but I didn't see that at the screening. But The Avengers is fantastic. If you see it, let me know what you thought below. If you're a nerd, give some more insight, because I didn't touch base on a lot of it. I'm trying to make this accessible for people. But again, thanks for watching. I warned you about the spoilers, so if it's spoiled, don't get mad at me. And I will catch you guys later. Thanks.